approach politics is through satire and humor. Because every time you try to approach it seriously, something happens that you can't quite help it. And I found that when I wrote my last book, Greetings from the Lincoln Bedroom, I wrote it as a fantasy of a satirical weekend in the Lincoln bedroom. The idea is that I lost a bet with Al Franken, with whom, as you had said, I had done commentaries on that, but had not had sex with him, especially I would never admit anything like that with the president of Father Steve, anyway. and being a good Greek Orthodox girl, and on top of it, let me tell you though, that I'm probably the only woman you know who can get a tax deduction for lingerie. And it's perfectly legal. But anyway, during those strange bedfellows sketches, we took a bet about how many seats Republicans will win. And we actually, I lost the bet, and I had to make a contribution to the Democratic National Committee. As a result of which, they decided to use me as part of their Republican outreach as a kind of lost leader, and invited me to spend 3 days in the Lincoln bedroom. That's where the fantasy begins. It's like going through down the rabbit hole or through the looking glass, whichever metaphor you want to use. And the Socks the cat becomes my Dick Throat, my guide through the White House. You know, basically, you have to go to the animal kingdom to get a sense of ethics in the White House. So you'll see in the course of what I'm saying, and if you read my columns, that I'm hardly a partisan Republican. I like to just take on anybody that I think is just not speaking the truth. It's really part of being a kind of Greek rebel. You know, the political class is really my enemy. You know, Republicans and Democrats, all those who basically go to Washington and forget the roots, forget what matters, and only care about power. And therefore are willing to do anything to stay in power or regain power or whatever is going on. So that's really my primary target, if you want. It's not Democrats, contrary to popular belief. I have actually written more negative columns about Newt Gingrich, who is having a hard time getting his approval ratings above those of the Unabomber. And I think that's really the major problem here. It's a crisis in leadership. It's a crisis in leadership among the Democrats, and frankly, George, I hope you're not going to disinvite me. It's also a crisis in leadership among Republicans.
Yeah.
So the public doesn't really know what to think. I mean, so I want to just make it very clear that this case is not about sex. The president had the opportunity in January to say, this is my private life, this is between Hillary and me. I'm not going to answer any questions about Monica Lewinsky. He could have said that. He didn't say that. He went on television on January 26th and wagged his finger and looked us in the eye and he said, listen to me. And he was incredibly convincing. His own former Labor Secretary, Robert Wright, wrote an article in which he said he was much more convincing when he was lying than when he was telling the truth. And that's why you had people like Senator Feinstein, you know, against whom my ex-husband ran. But I have only the highest things to say about her, because she was the first senior Democrat to say after the president changed his story that his credibility was shattered as far as she was concerned. And so basically this president can no longer remain president because he can no longer lead. Because the presidency in America, as the founding fathers have made clear, is about trust. If the trust is broken, then the power of the word, which is the power of the bully pulpit, is gone. And when that is gone, nobody can hear this president talk anymore. You know, I'm talking about Democrats, I'm talking about his friends. They hear him give a speech to the Foreign Relations Council talking about the need to rise to our responsibilities, and they laugh. They snicker. You know, in a dangerous world, this is not something that can continue, which is why I launched last week, because I believe in civil disobedience campaigns. I believe in grassroots campaigns. So I launched a website called resignation.com. And we've already had over 500,000 hits. It's just gone like beyond anything we could have hoped. you can come to our website, and I urge you to do so, and vote calling for the president's resignation. And also, you can participate in a contest for the best resignation speech. And if you win, you get a trip to Elba, the island of Elba, where Napoleon was. What is happening to our country when this whole political debate is conducted in terms of polls and polling results? You know, leadership was always about moving the nation from where it is to where it needs to be. It hasn't been about following polling results. You know, in my book I have the last chapter when President Lincoln arrives in the White House, very well preserved, and comes to visit me in the Lincoln bedroom. And he sits there and gives me this whole diatribe on leadership, in which he says to me, if Dick Morris had been around, he said, when I signed the Emancipation Proclamation, he would have told me not to do it because it would have brought my approval ratings down by 20 points. And it's true. At the time, the Emancipation Proclamation was a deeply unpopular document. He signed it because he was a leader and he believed that it took a civil war to end slavery in this country. If it was today, he would have probably signed something like Secretary's Day. You know, because leaders are really cowards today. Instead of coming forward with what they believe, they conduct a poll, and then they recycle the polling results back to the people. Throughout history, you know, resignation has been a very honorable thing to do, even among people who have disgraced themselves. It's a way to put the national interest above the purely personal, narcissistic interest. And if you read even President Nixon's speech, you know, it's moving. Because he starts his speech by saying, I'm not a quitter. Quitting now is against every instinct in my body. But he says this country needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress. And let me tell you, right now this country needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress. And I don't know about you, but the prospect of 2 more years going through impeachment hearings is a very depressing prospect for me.
On your comment about the politicians not willing to lead, isn't it in a representative democracy, isn't one of the obligations of a politician to listen to the people and vote the way the people want to vote, want the politician to vote?
No, that's direct democracy. And if we wanted direct democracy, we would have built computers in people's homes, and they could vote, and then whatever the majority wanted would be the law. Representative democracy, which is what we have in this country, very specifically indicates that members of Congress and senators are supposed to vote their conscience, even if their constituents disagree. And that's leadership. You know, you take a vote and ask people about Iraq, or terrorism, or nuclear non-proliferation. It doesn't even register. It's not even on the radar screen. And yet, nuclear proliferation is the greatest danger our children are facing. But it's being ignored by everybody because politicians do not see it on the Gallup poll and do not respond to it. Leadership is identifying a problem before it hits 50% of the Gallup poll. That's really what leadership is. It's identifying a problem and going out there and convincing people of the need to do something about it. And if you succeed, you get elected. And if you don't succeed, you don't get elected.
Can we log on to your resignation.com and vote no?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to know.